right, dealing with the negotiation process, they talk about 4 phases of the negotiation process. Once again, this may not play out in how we actually negotiate because remember, like I said, we're not negotiating for ourselves. We're actually negotiating on behalf of your client, which is really what our job is. We are an intermediary between parties to eliminate any of the stuff that we talked about just a minute ago. You know, we don't want the buyer to insult the seller and the seller to call the buyer's names because of the price points and all that. We are the insulation. So when we negotiate, back to what I said, it's not supposed to be us. And keep that in mind. Don't get involved. Don't get vested. But they talk about the pre-negotiation section. This is the conversation that you're going to have with your client. You know, what's important to you? What do you need? What's your ultimate goal? When the buyer comes, you know the buyer's going to come with a low price. It's the game, and for those of you at home, it's finger quotes, that everybody plays. Now, ironically, I had a guy a number of years ago whose name was Stan Gervitz. Stan's no longer living, but he was an investor, and he did not like to play the game. He literally would determine what his bottom dollar was, and that's what we listed at. And he gave me permission to deny anything, not that price, and literally tell them that's the price. You know, he didn't jack it up and come down. He didn't want anything more than what he thought was his bottom dollar. And we did a double over on New Jersey and like 38th, but it was like 24 grand. That's what he wanted. And everybody that, you know, send offers, 20, 18, 16 in cash. And he would just say, it's 24. Okay, well, we'll offer you 18. Will you come down to 22? He's like, no, it's 24. That's what my price was. So he never played any of this. I don't know if you would call that hardball, but I mean, he could have started at 28 and, okay, 26 and get down to 24. But I mean, when we listed, I sold like 3 or 4 things for him. Every time he told me what I wanted listed at, and that's what I get. So that's what I'll get, or I won't sell it.
Was he the same way when he bought stuff?
I don't know, never bought for him. This guy was an older gentleman, and he was kind of going out of the business. So he was divesting himself of the last 4 or 5 properties. That's a good question. That would have been interesting to know how his purchasing habits were, but we never had that conversation. He sold like 2 doubles side by side, and then he sold a single unit, and then 1 other single unit. But in all cases, it was, this is my price, this is what I want.
My very first listing was like that. They listed it for exactly what they wanted it for.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know why, but for me, it made it kind of awkward because agents would call and be like, hey, you know, can you just give us something on this, whatever? And I'm like, I'm so sorry, I cannot. I said,
yeah.
I listed it for exactly what they wanted. I said, you can shoot over whatever you want, but from what I've seen in the history, they're going to come back with the list price.
Yeah. By the time we did his first one, I kind of felt bad like that. But by the time the second one came around, I actually started telling other people exactly what I was just told you guys. I said, look, dude, we could have started this at 28, and we could have played this game, and we're just taking more time, and you'd have had a little bit of fun, and you'd have got to beat us up to 24, or the price is 24, and that's where we're at. He's like, okay, and then he did something, call back and goes, so do you think he'd give any selling concessions? No. I'll ask you. You write, like you said, you write the offer, I'll be glad to give it to him. But I'm telling you, our conversation was, he wants to gross 24 and pay his bills and walk away. That's it.
And I think some agents think that the game is required, or people in general, just because the house that we listed was at least $20,000 below market value because they were selling it as is.
Yeah.
They live in California, and so people were still calling, wanting to offer like 152, 153.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's 160. Like that's.
Can you put in your listing like run comps before you make your offer because it's already priced right?
Yeah, run the comps before you make yourself look like an idiot. I don't know. I had a client that I ended up stopped working with because now we're on a whole different topic. He was that thief buyer. And he told me, he said, I never pay list price. I don't care what it is. And I said, I have a problem with that. One's if we run into a house where they've priced it according to its value, and it should be 100,000 instead of 150, kind of like the one you said. He'd say, oh, I'd still offer him 80. And we went through about 3 or 4 houses with him offering like 60 to 70% of the value that was on the MLS, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. And after about 4, I said, I can't justify working with you. He said, well, I understand. He goes, I've gone through 4 or 5 agents. He said, I get one out of about every 30 deals, and I make a lot of money. I said, yeah, but you realize in 30 deals, if I wrote all 30 of those, I wouldn't make any money. I said, what you need to do is go use another agent for 27 of those deals and come back to me on the last 3, and I'll write your offer, because I can make money if I'm only writing 3 of them for you, but if I'm writing 30 of them, by the time we get one, I can't make any money. I don't want to work for $2 an hour. But his negotiation principle was like that. Cash, 60 or 70%, no matter what you got it listed at, and he was, I don't pay list price. So, the conceptualization, meaning what do you think this negotiation is going to go like? Do you have experience with the other agent? Have you dealt with them before? Was their first offer rude? Or was their first offer very stern? Or did they kind of, like you said, well, can you see what you can do? As opposed to, this is our offer, take it or leave it. So the conceptualization of the negotiation process. What do you expect it to be? And I have that conversation with my client all the time. Here's what I would expect. We start here. They're going to offer this. We're going to come back with this, And then how do you think this is going to play out? Where do you see yourself ending as the final number? And typically, and just with this guy that I was dealing with earlier, was telling you about, money wasn't his issue. And that's what his final thing came down to be. Look, I don't care the way he said it wasn't right. He said, look, I don't care where we end up on money. I'm more interested in can we close. I'd be willing to give up some money to make sure we close on time. Fortunately, we got a good offer and we got a good price and a good closing time. So it kind of hit the best of both worlds. Settling the details, that's always the hard part. One of the things in the negotiation I've had other agents talk about, and I want you guys to understand, in the process, remember where the guy makes the offer, and let's say he counters or writes an offer with 5 things. Price, closing, points, whatever those 5 things are. And you counter back during the negotiation, and let's say you counter back 1, 3, and 5. The assumption is what about 2 and 4? Want me to know again? The offer came to us with 5 conditions, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. When I counter back, and I counter 1, 3, and 5, the concept is 2 and 4 are agreed upon, right? Okay. Can another counter come back in the negotiation process and readdress 2 and 4?
Why not?
The answer is yes. Right? I've had that happen. You wouldn't believe how many agents I've actually talked to me that say, no, they can't do that. I'm like, dude, you're still in the offer process.
Redundant, but it can't,
Well, I mean, you can change it.
Oh,
I guess that's what I meant.
okay.
They're going to change it again.
I've already had that happen.
Yeah, that happens quite a bit. Where 2 might be $3,000 in closing costs, all right? And you agree to do the price, or you agree to do everything, including the closing costs, but you want the price to be your $120. They come back and go, okay, we'll do the $120, but actually now we need $4,000 in closing cost. That happens all the time. So just because you have accepted one of the deals or one of the terms doesn't mean that it's still not open for negotiation. That's part of setting the details. And you've got to make sure that you're always keeping track of, well, did they agree to that or did they not agree to that? Well, let's change that. Okay, I'll leave the washer and dryer, but we're going to up the price of the house. I've seen that happen a lot, where the price of the house is not one of the negotiation issues, but then they come back and want like the basketball goal and the swing set. Okay, let's go back and retouch the price of the house again. Now that if we leave that, then this has to change. And then follow up, and that goes to what I was just talking about, making sure that you follow up on all the points, make sure there's always a good thing. There's one thing that you guys can do, and if you guys had a bank yet, David, you guys deal with a lot of banks. Have you had a bank call you and have you rewrite the offer?
All the time, bank offers.
Yeah, because they don't want like 13 counter offers. They want you to novate the contract, which means to change the contract. So they want you to rewrite one with all the final terms that you've got so that it's one offer, and it will supplant the place of that one. You know, that seems to be a big issue now with some of the banks to do that.
Sometimes I don't like that because when you're countering, they'll respond just on email like, hey, we'll do that, but we'll give you this, this, and this. When we get all the contracts together, you can rewrite the purchase agreement with these.
Yeah, or banks won't, they'll say final signature to be at the closing table. I got stuck in a round robin years ago with a seller where the bank said they would sign at the closing table, and our lender wouldn't do the final docs to my buyer because they didn't have a signed purchase agreement. You know, they got caught into that where actually my client was the buyer, so I was the selling agent. But the lender was giving us a hard time about, well, we don't really have a purchase agreement. Bank needs to sign it. And the bank gave us that old, you know, hey, we'll final sign will be at the table. When negotiating, remember, it's all based on power. And there's several different types of power that you can use inside the negotiation. The first one's legitimate power. Legitimate power is when a person has actual power. It's when someone's in a higher position, like a boss and a subordinate. That would be legitimate power, all right? I hired that guy, I can fire him. That is not one of the types of power that we usually see inside of the real estate. Coercive power is one where you threaten somebody. Hey, sign this or we'll do this. A lot of guys try that, and David, sounds sort of like what happened today. That's what he was trying to do. The threat of, hey, there's other offers, you better make another offer today, is a coercion power. That's one that he tried to adopt. The problem with that is he who cares least wins, or something like that. You know, and I think you handled it correctly. Well, you know, that is our offer.
Well, what he didn't know that I didn't know is that we had offers on 3 houses, and we figured we were only going to give one of them.
Yeah.
We didn't care which one of the 3 we were going to get.
Hope you didn't get 3 of them.
Well, actually, they'd be fine if it happens.
Yeah. So coercive power is one that people try and elicit all the time. Hey, do this or else. Expert power, this is the one you guys possess. You have the power of expertise. You understand when your client says, I want to list this at 1.8 million because I've got this bill. No. My advice is this. I've been through this before. I know what's going to happen. You have the expert power. All right, that's the one you guys need to use because you are the expert in this realm. So help your client through that. Informational power is the weakest power to have. That means I have information you don't have, so that puts me in a better negotiation. The problem with that is within a couple of terms of negotiation, that informational advantage goes away. You know, didn't I just tell you guys that we had that deal where they said the inspection said the roof was bad, so they wanted released, but didn't want to give us the inspection report? That was an attempt at informational power. They thought or acted like they had information we didn't have, and within 4 or 5 times of talking, they lost that advantage. You know, you cannot not give us the information if you want us to acquiesce to you. So they eventually never gave the report. So we're still in limbo.
So what's happening then?
Right now, I called the title company the other day. We are not holding the earnest money, which I'm not happy about that. And that's a discussion I'm having with my agent. But beyond that, I called the title company and said, you know that we are not going to sign that release.
Oh, so the earnest money got sent to the title company, not to you?
Yes. The agent decided to have the earnest money be held by the title company. All right?
And so is the title company, do they have to side with anybody?
They cannot side with anybody.
So they just have to be neutral?
Yes, they have to be neutral.
Hold it until you guys come to an agreement?
They have to hold it till we come to an agreement or a judge comes to an agreement for us. And that was the decision, and that was the call. I knew that, but I wanted to make sure that he knew that. And I called him and said, you understand, we're not signing that mutual release, and I want to make sure that you are not going to cut that check. And he's like, oh, no, sir, we would never cut that check without a mutual release first. I said, okay, that was the correct answer, but sometimes some people don't always do what's the correct thing.
So that earnest money will go to your seller if these guys do in fact get out?
In my belief, they do.
But that's what happens, so the earnest money goes to the seller? Right?
Yes. Theoretically, it becomes liquidated damages and transfers to my seller, yes. Based on the fact they won out for no reason. Their claim is the roof is bad based on their report. They have informational power holding over us that we don't have. But they can't have that. You know, hey, you can't just tell me you have a report that says the roof's bad and expect me to believe it without the proof.
Can't you get a roofing company to come out and give you an estimate to repair the roof? And if it shows there's no repairs needed, then you can, it would do nothing more than win for your client, the earnest money, because the other,
You know a roofer?
yeah, happy to.
Yeah. We could do that, but this is almost like pleading the fifth. Why do we have to prove that we're right until they prove we're wrong?
There's a lot of comments on the Facebook page about this very thing.
Well, the comments are,
You know,
the term was major defect that now went to defect.
well, that if somebody puts in the agreement that everything's contingent on inspection, doesn't that override this mutual release thing? Because if somebody finds something in the inspection and if they ask you to fix it and you say no, then all bets are off.
Right.
If they don't ask you to fix it, is that what holds them to this contract now with the mutual release?
Yeah, because now, starting January 2016, our purchase agreement says that the sellers must at least be given the chance to fix it, which I don't know if I agree with that or not. Anybody want to corroborate that and back me up on that? Isn't that what the new purchase agreement says? That the sellers now have the right to at least attempt to fix it. The sellers just can't say, oh, bad roof, I want to back out, which is exactly what these guys are trying to say. But furthermore is they're not even proving there's a bad roof because they won't turn over the report that says it's bad. They just want us to believe them, which flies in the face of the old purchase agreement. And the new one's even worse because we're not given a chance to fix it. And maybe that's what you were talking about. Maybe we should go out and get a inspection report and come back and have our guy tell us there's nothing wrong with the roof, which we know that already, we think. All right. And the word, it was major defect, now just says defect on that. Reward power, we don't ever see that in this business. That's where someone has the power to give a reward or a benefit. And then the other one is referent power. That's the ability to convey a sense of personal acceptance or approval. That's the one where somebody has a lot of charisma, so you follow them and you think they have power because they're good or smart or good looking. That's the biggest power you can have, is when someone has referent power. And that's what you see Hollywood stars have. You know, oh, he's a god because he's so good acting or beautiful or whatever. That's the power that they usually try and garner. So informational power, but the one that we have is expert power. We need to exercise your expert power.